Low-key geek. Hey, he's a low-key geek. He tries to be out there when he wants to be, but hey, he's a low-key geek.
Ooh. Hey, what is going on, guys? How's it going? Happy Monday. It is the last Monday of June. So crazy that now we're heading into July and we're halfway through the year. And obviously quite a year it's been. And that's putting it very mildly. But I hope you guys had a great weekend. Welcome to the weekly podcast. Not live today. Obviously, this is coming to you pre-recorded because of some scheduling on my end, some things I had to take care of later in the day. It's now like Monday, just before noon. So obviously anything I discuss today may be old news to some of you, but I'm still going to be covering some things that came out on the wire through the weekend, some stuff from last week. I wasn't able to put together a weekend pop, which is my weekly news recap last week due to some technical issues on my end, but that should still be coming to you weekly again this Friday. I'm going to try to upload it on Friday, but more than likely it'll probably be on Saturdays just because there's a lot of last minute stuff that comes in that I usually tend to like to talk about, but we'll see. I'll make sure to update you guys, or just stay tuned to the channel and you'll see when that video is live. But yeah, I'm working on a lot of new things. I just recently posted over the weekend my latest review on the new Netflix movie Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga. So do check it out on the channel. I was pretty entertained with it. I'll just give my brief rundown. I thought the performances by Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams were pretty well done. But Rachel McAdams definitely is a huge standout for me for that movie. But if you want to hear more, check out that video. You'll find it on the channel, available for you now, as it was uploaded on the weekend. But hope you guys, like I said, had a great weekend. If you're watching, thank you. Please do hit that like and subscribe button, because especially the likes, because that does definitely help me with the YouTube algorithm robots and all the inner workings behind the scenes there. Gets the channel more aware, helps us build this community up, and hopefully we could share more conversations with more review folks out there. So definitely do that, and that'll be greatly appreciated as always. But the weekend for me was pretty usual and standard. Again, had my lovely D&D session with my group of friends on Saturday night, which was a lot of fun. We're progressing on in that campaign of ours. Caught, like I mentioned to you, Eurovision. Also, I've been watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy again. I've been, and I do blame Dungeons and Dragons for this, but I've gotten into this whole fantasy mode lately. So, I wanted to relive those classics. And for myself, again, my own opinion, these movies still really hold up. And it's just a lot of fun to watch. These movies that came out such a long time ago now, if you think about it. But I remember watching these in the theater when they first came out, and even rewatching them in their extended forms. I didn't watch the extended forms. I should have, but that's a lot of dedication to put into watching those movies because those things are so long. But I just watched what was available on HBO Max because for now they do have it there available for streaming. So yeah, in a nutshell, that was my weekend. And we're now leading into a holiday weekend because July 4th is the end of this week. So I hope you guys have great plans to celebrate with your family, friends, but of course in the safest manner as possible. I think one of the most unique things that's happening this week here in New York is obviously we're all known for the very popular Macy's July 4th fireworks display. But it sounds like now the city is doing a daily Borough fireworks show. I don't know the full details in it. I just kind of read a quick glimpse on it on the news, but it looks like every borough for one day this week, their own dedicated days, will have their own special dedicated fireworks show. So I'm sure, you'll read about it and you'll see how that goes in the news. I'm curious to see how it's going to pan out, or if I'll even be able to see it from my window, since I do have a decent view of the city skyline and all that. But we'll see. So that being said, let's go over, like I usually like to do, to see what you guys have been watching over the weekend and how you guys have been spending your time. I'm not going to review the box office because as I'm looking through the numbers, it's pretty much the same thing week over week. Nothing so exciting. And plus, it also depends on when studios report their numbers too. And as I mentioned last week, a lot of old blockbuster movies were making their ways up onto the daily charts. I mean, the weekend charts. So you had movies like Jurassic Park, Jaws, Goonies, Ghostbusters, things like that popping into the weekend numbers because movie theaters who are now allowed to be open and drive-ins are using those to kind of bring people back to watching movies on the big screen. So I haven't seen any as of this time. I haven't seen any of those numbers reported yet, so I don't know what the full breadth is. So I'll skip it this week. I'll see if I get back to it next week. But for now, let's take a look at what you guys have been purchasing through iTunes there. So over for the iTunes numbers, number one, Trolls World Tour made its way back to the number one spot after taking a little break. I'm assuming it's because more and more kids are now available to watch movies now that school is officially over for a lot of people. I know a lot of graduations happened in the last week or so. So Trolls World Tour is back up on the number one spot. At number two, you have Irresistible. This is the new movie that was directed by Jon Stewart, and it stars Steve Carell. It's kind of like a political comedy. So that made its way onto number two. I am very curious to see how this movie is, so I may check it out myself. And as I usually like to do nowadays, I will provide a review if I do on the channel. Number three, The King of Staten Island holds in the top five and is now on number three. So a lot of you folks are still catching up on this movie. I still have yet to see it, but I am planning to watch it this week. Obviously, this is a Judd Apatow, Pete Davidson movie that is a semi-autobiography of his life. So stay tuned to the channel because more than likely I will have a review on this movie this week. Number four, you have Jumanji, The Next Level, found its way back up on the charts again. I think this goes along with Trolls World Tour, where you have more kids and more family time happening, watching movies now that school's over. So I'm sure that's one of the reasons why it's made its way back up there. At number five, you have Sea Fever, which is a new kind of horror thriller that takes place in the ocean. That comes in at number five. Number six, The Invisible Man. This has been hanging on strong in the top 10 ever since I started doing podcasts. It was one of the last theatrical releases that actually came out, but clearly a great movie that a lot of people are talking about. Elizabeth Moss, there are a lot of talks about if we were to have the Oscar race right now, she would be headlining the position of Best Actress of the Year so far. So I hope to check this out soon. Again, just haven't had the chance to, but with all the buzz happening, I definitely want to check it out. At number seven, you have Trolls, the 2-movie collection, which is interesting. So I guess people who want to kind of get the combo of Trolls 1 and 2, that's what you guys were doing over the weekend. Number eight, you have The Gentleman. This has also been kind of in the top 10 for the last several weeks. This is the latest from Guy Ritchie here. Number nine, You Should Have Left. This was a brand new thriller movie with Kevin Bacon that came out last weekend. And number 10, you have the war drama 1917. Again, I cannot speak enough of how great of a movie this is. And if you haven't seen it yet, please do check it out. It is a wonderfully filmed movie, great action, great storyline, and will definitely keep you at the edge of your seat as you're watching it. So do check that out. So that is what's happening there on iTunes. Let's head over now to Netflix to see what was the top viewings there over at Netflix. So number one, obviously Eurovision, the new movie that came out on Netflix on Friday. So as I mentioned, my review is up on the channel for this, but this is a new comedy starring Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams. Number two is that new game show, Floor is Lava. I have yet to watch this. It just looks really ridiculous, but it has a lot of that similarities to like, the summer fill shows like Wipeout and things like that you find on network television. But apparently a lot of you guys are loving it. So that is in the number two. Number three, you have 365 Days, which is that erotic thriller that has been in the top 5 for the last several weeks. Number 4, you have a new documentary called Athlete A, which kind of exposes the unfortunate sexual abuse around a specific doctor when it comes to Olympic athletes in the gymnast world. So looks very interesting. I think this is something I definitely want to check out soon. But that comes in at number 4, and it was recently released on Netflix too. So I'm pretty sure that's why a lot of people are paying attention to it. At number 5, you have the new series on Netflix called The Order. It talks about a hidden society within a college university. So that is a new series that is capturing a lot of you guys' attention. So that is at number 5. Number 6, you have Home Game, which is also kind of like a sports documentary that talks about these really extreme and thrilling sports in specific countries, some of which these sports are considered deadly and all that. So very exciting stuff there. So that is at number 6. Number 7 is Crazy Delicious, which is a brand new European kind of cooking show, which pits a lot of chefs who cook very interesting courses and meals based off of very interesting ingredients. So it's a nice spin on your cooking contest type of show there. Number 8, you have The Nut Job. Again, a great animated movie for the kids and families to watch together. Number 9, Feel the Beat, which is the dance comedy that came out about a week ago. So that's still hanging strong at number 9. Now, number 10, Love. This is one of those interesting movies that I am very curious as to how it came about to be in the top 10, but I have a feeling it's because of 365 Days, and I'll tell you why. So Love is kind of an erotic drama art film that was directed by Caspar Noé. It is his 4th movie, and it wasn't really like a well received movie. The only thing I've personally heard about this movie is the amount of sex scenes in it and how erotic and how explicit these sex scenes are. I believe the minute you start the movie, they already throw you into a heavy intercourse scene there. So I'm trying to find what the premise is here of this movie. But basically here we go. It's Murphy, who is an American living in Paris, enters an emotionally charged relationship with Electra, who happens to be unstable. To spice up their relationship, they invite a third party, their neighbor, into their relationship. So I really do feel like there's a lot of you guys out there who are maybe horny or very, very sexual driven because of the lockdown, and maybe you guys just need some spice in your life, and perhaps Pornhub is not doing it for you. So that found its way to number 10 there on the Netflix chart. And I'm pretty sure those who finished watching 365 Days wanted something similar. So that is definitely something within the same vein there. So very interesting stuff there on the weekend charts. But do let me know in the comments or all the various ways you could find me. If you've seen any of these, what your thoughts are. What were your thoughts on Eurovision? I'm curious to hear what your opinions and thoughts are. Across the board, I've been seeing positive stuff, from being mediocre to being, very enjoyable and very fun. But I think everyone has been kind of saying the similar things, where Rachel McAdams is the big standout of this movie. And, not to spoil in what I said in my review, but I personally didn't think Dan Stevens was a good fit, but apparently a lot of you did. So I am very curious to hear what you guys think about that, and what's happening there. Um, so that's what's happening over the weekend. Now, moving on to some of the other interesting things that I wanted to discuss on this program today. So, no big surprise over the weekend, and I think the news really started breaking on Thursday and Friday, where we had once again more news about pushbacks and delays in summer movie releases. So the big one obviously was Tenet. Tenet, they were hell bent on releasing Tenet in July. It was originally supposed to come out July 15th, I believe, and then they pushed it back 2 weeks to July 30th. Because they're hoping that more and more theaters can fully be open by then. Now, with the recent re-rise or resurgence of the COVID, infections and hospitalizations and just positive test results, they decided to, think things over again. And a lot of the movie theater chains like AMC and Regal decided that instead of opening up on July 15th, they're now going to be opening up on July 30th. So because of this, Tenet has now officially moved back their release date to August 12th, which is another 2 weeks after their new release date of the end of July. And shortly after that, Disney now announced that Mulan, the live action Mulan movie that I think a lot of people were waiting to see, will now be officially moved back to August 21st. So we are heading into July. July 4th weekend is this weekend. Drive-in theaters are in full swing and opening up to celebrate the summer, but we have no summer blockbuster movies yet to be shown. And if you've been a huge moviegoer like myself, and you've been following the news and the industry, that already come like March, a lot of these summer blockbusters really start creeping their way into the theaters, with April being kind of like the new full month of full potential blockbusters. And we are well into the year, like I said, July, and still no summer blockbusters are available for anyone to watch. So does this kind of mark a change or possibly the death of the summer movie season? Because let's say, all things considered, everything is fine, everything is well and good, and maybe there's not a pure vaccine, but maybe there's better treatments or whatever the case is. But let's say, movie theaters are fully open, they're in the swing of things, and people are being respectable and wearing their masks and doing what they need to do. A lot of these movies won't be coming out till September, in my opinion. We have 2 dates here in August, but let's see how true they're going to stick to those dates. But let's just say, sake of argument, September, November. You only have 3 or 4 months left in the year for a lot of these movies that have been pushed back to come out and show face. And a lot of studios have already decided to push a lot of their movies into next year. So I feel like the whole movie industry and film going experience has been put to rest for the rest of 2020. There's still a huge debate on whether studios can or should release their movies on demand, whether it's through video on demand or through a streaming service like Netflix or Disney Plus. But that begs the question, like, what is the summer movie season really going to be like? Not only this year, but in later years, like, what's it going to look like next year? Or how are situations going to change and all that? But how is this also going to put a dent in the movie industry as a whole? Now, I don't want to put a lot of attention on studios and, big names and all that, because they have money, right? I'm talking about like the other people, your carpenters, your set designers, your costume designers, your, gaffers, your, all these like little, stunt people, like all of these people that are employed within Hollywood to work on these productions that have been on pause now for a good part of the year. And, with all the recent increases of cases in California, there's still no signs of them picking things up as far as studio production and filming. So, what's it going to look like for the industry as a whole? Because they're losing a lot of money already this year. And just to put it into perspective, I did some research on last year and what the summer movie season brought in last year. And last summer, the movie industry earned $4.86 billion through Labor Day of last year. Now, like I mentioned, the season tends to start in April, probably like late April, mid-April, or whatever the case is. But if you think about that, from mid-April through Labor Day, the movie industry raked in $4.86 billion. Right now, I don't even think the movie industry has made like not even like 1/10 of that. Because nothing has been coming out. The only major release that came out was Trolls World Tour when that came out on demand, and then you had, movies like Scoob, and, now you had The King of Staten Island and Irresistible. But those aren't, aside from maybe like Trolls, big blockbuster movies, we haven't seen anything yet. And even if they did go the on-demand route, will they make that same type of money? That's the big question. And, we're talking domestic, but what about international also? Things still aren't, that well and done in China, in markets like China. Japan, I know their theaters are fully open, and they're maintaining proper social distancing in there. When my new Japanese video series comes out, Japan Wow Now, I am going to talk about the Japanese movie industry there. And even to entice people to get into movies, they're also re-releasing old classics. And Studio Ghibli is actually making in big bank because they decided to release a lot of their original movies back into the theater for the very first time in Japan since their original release, because that's not something that Ghibli has been known to do in the past. And looking at the recent numbers within the box office in Japan, in the top 10, you have at least 6 Ghibli movies, because people are obviously huge fans of these movies, but I think people in general just really want to go to the movies and watch something on the big screen. So again, begs the question, what's going to happen with the summer movie season? Or if we should even consider there to be a summer movie season. Will we see movies like big tentpole movies from Disney, Marvel, Sony to come out now anytime, whether it be February, or January? That used to be like the dumping grounds of the movie industry. Obviously, end of the year, we see a lot of movies because of the holidays and because of the Oscar season race, right? But next year is going to be very, very telling on how a lot of these movies are going to play out, especially when it comes to their release dates and how they're going to, kind of finagle their way around the movie seasons. Because right now, we are not having a summer movie season, and it doesn't look like we're going to be getting one at all. We're hopeful for August, and I'm hoping that something like that can happen for these guys and for a lot of you who are dying to go back to movies, the movie theaters as well. But I really don't see it happening. And even if it does, what is the impact there? As let's just say you take 100% of the people that went to movies last summer. Will we get half of those same people even going into movies now? I don't know. I know it's a mixed bag out there. I know a lot of people, when you ask them, are you excited for movie theaters to open back up and go out to movies? And it's 50-50, to be honest with you. Like myself And I think everyone I know within my circle, they are not ready to go back to movies at all. However, when I look at comments online, whether it be on Facebook or Twitter, there are a lot of people out there who are dying to go back to the movie theaters and really can't wait. And I'm guessing and hoping that a lot of these people are from the areas where maybe the COVID pandemic situation didn't hit them as hard as California, New York, Florida. I mean, Florida is a huge mess right now. And there's still a debate: will they be able to open Disney? Because Disney World right now is still scheduled to open up in the middle of July, but you have record number of reports now coming in of people who tested positive over there. Like thousands and thousands of people in just one weekend were reported. And then you have now the NBA trying to restart their mini season now at the end of July in Orlando, Florida. Is that even going to happen? So yeah, so I think it's something that is, in my opinion, like very interesting to think about, very interesting to ponder, especially me being like a big movie fan that I am, and how much I love cinema and movie. And I do love that movie going experience. There's nothing in my mind that can ever top that. Being around your fellow peers, enjoying something on the big screen and reacting in real time. I love that. I've mentioned before many times, you hear that clip that gets circulated every now and then about the reactions of people watching, Avengers Endgame. And during those key moments, you hear just the crowd burst, whether it's in cheers or applause or, whatever the case is. That there's nothing that really beats that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love watching movies here at home. I don't have to worry about anyone being on their cell phones or, little kids running around creating ruckus. And I could really focus on the movie, but still there's that social aspect that I think a lot of us do miss, including myself. So it will be sad to see this thing change dramatically, but I understand why. It's a product of the current environment that we're in right now. And maybe as a whole, things are just needed to be reset, so that these type of changes can be made and precautions can be made so that everyone else can be safe for this and any other public event, whether it's going to a sporting event, a concert, a comedy show, or what have you. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think about it and all that. But yeah, it's definitely interesting news when you really start to think about it and look into it. I mean, $4.86 billion last summer. And now, we're not, Hollywood hasn't even seen a fraction or even a fraction of that. So, yeah, a lot of pockets being hurt, a lot of jobs, being hurt, people and who work in this industry suffering. So definitely do think about that, because I think it's very easy to get caught up in the studios, they have all the money in the world, like I don't have to worry about them. Disney can afford this and that. Yeah, it's true. But what about, the guy who gets the coffee for these actors and actresses and directors and producers? What about the guy who, makes sure that the costumes are all ready for everybody, the makeup people, the stunt guys? These guys are all out of work, and, they love the craft that they do. Just like I'm sure, like if you guys love what you do, what will happen if that gets taken away from you? And I think a lot of us have experienced that during this pandemic. So yeah, food for thought right there. But moving on to other news here, and there's a lot to cover, so I may, rapid fire through a lot of these things. So do bear with me. But speaking of movies and drive-ins, the Tribeca people have announced what their drive-in lineup is going to be for this summer. And I reported before several weeks ago that Tribeca Enterprises, they've decided to do this summer drive-in series that will run Thursdays through Sundays from July 2nd through August 2nd at drive-ins nationwide here in the United States. So these venues include places in Los Angeles, New York, Arlington, Texas, Miami, Seattle, and other cities there. So from what I'm reading here, according to the Hollywood Reporter, you have this series will feature themes such as music movies, with Selena, The Bodyguard, Straight Outta Compton. Sports Sundays with Creed, Jerry Maguire, Space Jam, and Love and Basketball. Then you have time travel comedies with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Back to the Future. High school comedies with Mean Girls and Superbad. I don't know why they don't include classics like Breakfast Club in there. I mean, that would have been nice. You have Ladies' Night with Girls Trip and Bridesmaids. Hit the Road with Talladega Nights. The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. Speaking of Will Ferrell, that's one of his great, better movies there. And The Fast and Furious. Then you have a James Bond tribute with Goldfinger and Casino Royale. Two really great choices there, but it would have been nice if they included like one of the older school ones with Sean Connery in there, like a Dr. No or something like that. That would have been cool. And then Kids Night with Inside Out and the Lego Movie and Spy Kids. And then a 4th of July celebration will also feature screenings of Field of Dreams, The Wizard of Oz, and Apollo 13, which celebrates its 25th anniversary this year. So that's really amazing. So other highlights include screenings of Sundance breakout films like Palm Springs, Jaws, which this year celebrates its 45th anniversary. You have Do the Right Thing, Inside Man, The Dark Knight, Beetlejuice, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Meet the Parents, Meet the Fockers, Crazy Rich Asians, Wonder Woman, The Goonies, and Black Panther. So these are the movies that they're planning to screen during this whole period of their series, their drive-in series. So a lot of great movies here. A lot of great movies, especially if you haven't had a chance to like catch them on the big screen. But I think this will be a lot of fun for you and the family, or some friends to kind of go to the drive-in and have that drive-in experience. It's a tradition of mine to do it at least once every summer. So knowing that I can catch a movie like any movie like this that's on this list, I think that would be a lot of fun, you know, especially just to really relive a lot of these moments on a big screen again. So something to look forward for you guys to do this summer. Again, we're talking about movies and debating on like going to the movies nowadays and all that. But I do think drive-ins are a safe alternative. Now, I don't know how they're going to handle the concessions and all that because that still involves human interaction. But, you know, maybe if drive-ins will allow you to bring your own food, you know, maybe they'll charge you for a small fee for bringing your own food or something like that, because I understand a lot of these drive-ins, they need to make money to maintain their operations and all that, just like a movie theater does. You know, my experience going to drive-ins, the ticket prices are very cheap. So they hope to eventually make their money from concessions and all that. So maybe if it's just a small fee to bring in your own food or whatever the case is, you know, why not? Again, I think this is one of the safer alternatives to have that movie experience outside of your home. So we'll see how that pans out. Moving on to other news, over the weekend, the first trailer for Respect, the movie about Aretha Franklin that stars Jennifer Hudson there, debuted. It debuted, I believe, during the BET Awards, if I'm not mistaken. But you got a glimpse of her portrayal of Aretha Franklin. I saw it, and you know, come on, let's face it. I mean, Jennifer Hudson is a powerhouse. I mean, she's a fantastic singer. She has proven to do really well acting-wise on the big screen. I think she really looks the part here, and I'm very curious as to how deep they're going to go into the Aretha Franklin storyline. Like, how far are they really going to talk about her church work and her church performances with her dad and all that. But it does look like they cover a lot of aspects of her career, especially her heavily involvement with, you know, civil rights and all that. So I think it looks like it's going to be a really great movie to watch. So the film stars Forrest Whitaker, Marlon Wayans, Audra McDonald, Queen Latifah, Mary J. Blige, Mark Maron, Tate Donovan, Titus Burgess, and newcomer Sky Dakota Turner. Huge cast. So definitely looking forward to seeing this movie, whether it comes out in the theater or demand, we'll see. But we at least got our first glimpse at it, and it looks really good. So do check it out. In other movie news, something of interesting note. So there's always been that debate about CG AI and what have you. But there's this one company that has decided to move forward and cast an AI robot in the leading role of a $70 million science fiction film. So yeah, Skynet is definitely on its way upon us and approaching big time. But yeah, this is the first time that a studio has decided to use a fully functional AI robot in one of its lead roles. So um, I'm reading the news here, and still I can't believe it. But Bonded Capital Media, which financed titles such as To the Bone and Oscar-nominated Loving Vincent, Belgium-based Happy Moon Productions, and the New York's 1010 Global Media have committed to back this $70 million science fiction film, which will feature its first fully AI intelligent actor. Based on a story by visual effects supervisor Eric Pham, Tarek Zodi, and Sam Cozy, who also produces Through Life Entertainment. It follows a scientist who discovers dangers associated with the program he created to perfect human DNA and helps the artificial intelligent woman he designed to escape. So it kind of sounds like Ex Machina in a way. But you had Japanese scientists Hiroshi Ishiguro and Kohei Ogawa, who created Erica in real life as part of their study of robotics, also taught her how to act, applying the principles of method acting to artificial intelligence. So wow, this is really freaky stuff, if you ask me. I don't know really how I feel about this. It is. Let's look at it in two ways, right? Let's look at it in a pure scientifical and technological aspect. Amazing that they can do that. Amazing that they can produce something like this. Amazing that we'll be able to see it on a big screen and how it, interacts with other people. On a movie-going aspect side of things, it's gonna be very weird and odd to see. I mean, we've had, like I mentioned, Ex Machina, but we still had a real actress portray, or act a series of actresses that portray these robotic forms, these AI robotic forms. But this is a pure robot that we're going to see on the big screen, And, when we talk about CG recreations of past performers or performers like, you had, when you saw the movie Rogue One and you saw Grand Moff Tarkin on the screen again. Yeah, it looked phenomenal, but we could still tell it's CG. You had a younger version of Princess Leia pop up at the end of the movie. Sorry, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but the movie's already old by now. But, you had a younger version of her, and that threw a lot of people off too. And then you have movies like Alita Battle Angel, and we knew that this was a CG character. But because of the way they wrote her and the way they kind of made her interact with everybody else, it was still enjoyable, but still we could tell this is not a real actor. So I don't know how this is going to play out, and I do find it to be kind of odd, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see whenever this movie is fully done and, produced. It looks like they already filmed some of her scenes in Japan last year, and they expect to shoot the rest of the movie in Europe next June of 2021. So obviously it's still going to be a lot of time until we see this movie. Is this another case where, yeah, this is a lot of talk, but then what happens if the movie ever does get produced, or if it even completes? We don't know. But I mean, $70 million is a lot of money to put into something like this. So yeah, very interesting stuff there. We'll see how it pans out. I still think it is extremely odd. But moving on. So I talked about Invisible Man before, and if you see this photo right here, yes. When this photo came out and it was shot and released by Universal Studios, this was during their whole, we're going to create this awesome Universal Dark Universe that features all of our classic horror movie franchises all in one, right? So you had the Mummy, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, you know, the Invisible Man, and you had Creature from the Black Lagoon, Jekyll and Hyde, all that stuff like that. And they're all supposed to be doing these movies, and it's all going to tie in together. And it was associated with top actors. I mean, you had Tom Cruise, Johnny Depp, you know, you had Russell Crowe, you know, just to name a few here in the picture. And you know, The Mummy came out with Tom Cruise, and it failed miserably. And then after that, we just didn't hear anything else on what was going to happen. But then Blumhouse came around and released The Invisible Man. And, you know, and as I told you, and as you've seen week by week, it's in the top 10 charts all the time because people really love that movie. It was done at a cheaper budget. You had good, you know, cast of actors associated with it. You know, Elizabeth Moss killed it in that role from what I've heard. And it made bank. It made bank when it was released in movie theaters and now apparently on demand as well. So now people are saying, could this be a new start of their dark universe? Now let's do it more lo-fi. Let's, you know, not spend huge Hollywood money on it. Let's keep it cheap and just cast it right and just have good writing and storytelling in it, which Blumhouse have always been able to do with a lot of their feature films and all that. So, you know, they asked, you know, Mr. Blum, you know, if this is really something that is going to happen. And apparently he said, no, they have no plans to do a lo-fi dark universe for these characters. They had a lot of fun doing The Invisible Man, and, you know, they really enjoyed working on it. But right now they said that Universal is currently treating each movie or each property as one-offs. And they're all going to be exploring how they're going to do it individually. And they're currently not thinking of tying them all in together into one universe. However, Bloom is open to be involved more if they were approached for that. So yeah, so in a way that's kind of a bummer, right? But maybe this is the best route to go. You know, maybe, you know, they showed success with The Invisible Man. Maybe take a break from there. Let's see what Universal decides to do with everything else. And then, you know, maybe they'll come back like a year or two from now, and then maybe they'll do, I don't know, Creature from the Black Lagoon or Jekyll and Hyde or something like that. But currently, right now on the slate, you have Ryan Gosling, who's leading the new Wolfman movie, and Karen Kusama is working on a new take on Dracula. So those are two movies that Universal is currently working on. But right now, it looks like Kusama is the only one who's really attached to Dracula at the moment. So we'll see what will happen. I mean, you know, Ryan Gosling and Wolfman, that sounds good. I would love to see Karen Kusama's take on Dracula. That'll be really interesting there. But yeah, that's about it. So yeah, if you had your hopes up for a new universe featuring all these classic properties, you may have to wait a little while longer for that, if at all. So that's what's happening there. Moving on, there are reports about, you know, Anthony Mackie had like an online interview over the weekend with Daveed Diggs. This is part of a series of highlighting and featuring a lot of the current, you know, Black performers and actors in Hollywood and all that, which have been great so far. I've been loving these conversations. So, you know, obviously the Falcon and Winter Soldier came up, and like how that's looking, especially since it is still expected to come out on Disney Plus later this year. So he mentioned that the filming of the series has been kind of filmed as if it was a 6-hour long movie. And I know that made the movie rounds this week, or over the weekend, I should say, you know, as wow, it's like a huge 6-hour movie. But I think a lot of productions nowadays kind of do things like that, where they do one extensive long take, right? Not take, but they do a long filming kind of schedule, right? And then with what they film, they eventually just cut them down into episodes, right? So that it feels more seamless. It feels more, you know, within the timeline and all that. So I don't think this is anything new, but, you know, especially with something that is involving Disney Plus, because the amount of money that they're throwing into this series is huge. It is like, let me pull up. I have the numbers here. So yeah, the miniseries is supposed to cost $150 million. For a TV show, that's huge. That is like really, 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 that's a lot of money. And then when you think about like kind of the budget that a lot of these Marvel movies have, I mean, obviously it's not as big, but still it's a lot. It's about in par with a lot of these other movies that you see being produced in Hollywood. So it's a lot of movie being thrown in there. But Disney does what Disney does, and as we've seen with a lot of the Marvel productions, it's been quality so far. So yeah, I'm really super excited about this series to come out. And a 6-hour movie or not, I think the more time you give to these characters, the more we're going to be able to learn about them, the more storytelling that can be done in this type of format, instead of, trying to fit it within a 2-hour, 2.5-hour window. You have more time to explore a lot of different things and flesh out these storylines. So I'm really, really super excited to see what will happen. But yeah, for some reason, that was like a big thing that came out. But another big thing that came out within this interview was that Anthony Mackie did mention that he strongly feels that Disney needs to have more inclusion in a lot of their productions. Excuse me. He mentioned that when he was on set, many times he's the only Black person on the entire set. And this includes your gaffers, your catering people, your costume and makeup, even your stunt people. Like, you didn't see one other African American or African, you just didn't see any other color representation within any of these productions. So yeah, that's something that needs to be pondered and looked into, because I find that incredibly hard to believe, especially for a big budgeted production like this, where I'm sure you have hundreds of people working on set and you only have one, a person of color in the entire set who happens to be your lead actor for that. So this is one of the things that, these movements lately that we've been seeing. This is the reason why this is happening, because things like that need to change. But yeah, so I did find that very interesting when he mentioned that. So moving on to other things that popped up. So I know it was reported, HBO Max hasn't been having the best of luck these days, especially with their launch and all that. And it's unfortunate because there was a lot of positivity and excitement going into this launch of this new service. Everyone was hoping that they were going to get their Disney, not Disney, your DC movies and your DC programming as a whole, only to find out that there are unfortunate legalities and things that may have prevented that from happening from day one. So one of which was, we had this huge slew of DC movies that were available at launch for HBO Max. And then it was reported last week or 2 weeks ago that majority of these movies were going to go at the end of June and may eventually come back later on down the line. But these were major movies. They were like Wonder Woman and Suicide Squad, Justice League, Batman v Superman, all that kind of stuff. They were all going to go. So that created huge backlash, with the service. But then now it's been reported that, HBO Max, they decided to change things up. And instead of pulling all of these movies, they will keep some of them and extend the runs of these until end of the year. But the thing that is, kind of interesting was that it was just a few titles. It wasn't everything. So why couldn't they just keep everything else through the end of the year as well? So that's what I find, kind of confusing. So the titles that are now remaining on the service that was once going to be yanked at the end of June, which would be tomorrow as of me taping this, is going to be Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, Justice League, and Batman v Superman. So those are the titles that are going to remain in the service until end of the year. However, the rest that was reported, which also includes all the older Batman movies, so your Tim Burton's, your Schumacher movies, those are all going away after June, along with Jonah Hex, Catwoman, Steel, The Losers, Teen Titans Go to the movies, and the Wonder Woman animated feature. So those are all still leaving the service, and gonna potentially return sometime down the line. But coming to the service in July, you have Aquaman, Shazam, Supergirl, Joker, Green Lantern, HBO's Watchmen, right? The new Doom Patrol. Sorry, these are titles that are remaining that were also available at launch. So these are still remaining on the service and not going away anytime soon. But they're still working on additional things to kind of rotate into the service. So the new ones coming in July, sorry about that, but the new ones coming in July will be all the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, the animated Superman Unbound movie, and Zack Snyder's Watchmen movie. So that's it. There you have it. So I don't know if things are going to continue to change in this respect. It's kind of annoying that, again, a lot of us expected these things to be readily available for us. And it's just not, right? So take it for what it is, but at least they're listening, and it looks like they're trying. I just don't understand what the issue is there. And again, it all boils down to what kind of deal they have with Warner Brothers and the DC Universe platform, and what kind of relationship is happening there. I'm sure there's a lot of back and forth and legalities and everything, because, the DC Universe platform, they're still trying to be their own platform, even though their numbers are really low. So we'll see what happens. But to stick along with HBO Max, another thing that was also reported on, and with big understanding, was that they decided to remove Gone with the Wind from their service. Because of the current situation that we find ourselves in, and the huge question about, proper representation in movies, and just respect being done, especially when it comes to highlighting certain negative moments in our history in the United States. So Gone with the Wind, if you're not familiar, they portray slavery and servitude really not poorly, but it is very well represented that this is something that was normal at the time, which should never be the case, right? So they pulled the movie, but they were always planning to bring it back with proper messaging in the beginning. So they finally put it back on the service. It's returned, and now it's included with 2 videos from Turner Classic Movies, offering insights into the film's overall legacy. One is an hour-long panel discussion entitled "The Complicated Legacy of Gone with the Wind," which was recorded in April of 2019 and moderated by author and historian Donald Bogle. The other is a 5-minute introduction to the movie, which is available to watch the minute you kind of hit the profile page and then you're about to select start. It features film scholar Jacqueline Stewart saying that the movie presents the antebellum South as a world of grace and beauty without acknowledging the brutalities of the system of chattel slavery upon which this world is based. The film's treatment of this world through a lens of nostalgia denies the horrors of slavery, as well as its legacies of racial inequality. Then she goes on to talk about how the Black cast members were not allowed to attend the film's premiere, and Oscar-nominated co-star Hayley McDowell, who plays the main servant of the household, she was not allowed to sit with the rest of the cast at the Oscar ceremony back then due to segregation laws that were still in place at that time. So yeah, I mean, you think back at this time, and obviously, really awful treatment across the board there. And again, at the time this movie was made, and it kind of rose into kind of movie dominance and a well-beloved movie, these were unfortunate things that were accepted at the time, which should never have been. And now we're in a different place now, or we're trying to get to a place where this is more well known and made aware of, that this stuff should never have been like that. So I do applaud them for kind of raising that type of awareness, and putting it out there that we are aware that these things were never addressed during this time and should have never really be put on film. Which also raises the question is, should Gone with the Wind be a movie that should still be watched even today? Like you have other movies, like for example, Breakfast at Tiffany's. I mentioned it before. You have Mickey Rooney, a white actor portraying an Asian man and doing the most slapsticky parody of a stereotypical Asian in movies, with the big buck teeth and the really exaggerated eyes and all that. I mean, that is god awful, and we shouldn't have to watch those things nowadays. But still, it's kind of difficult to kind of take away an art form of a movie that is so well received. I know so many people who love Breakfast at Tiffany's. There's so many people who to this day will go reserve breakfast or brunch at the Tiffany's location here on Fifth Avenue to kind of relive those moments they had while watching this movie and stuff like that. But yeah, those kinds of things need to be made aware of and need to be put out there. That's wrong. It should have never been like that. But should we prevent people from watching these movies? Should people even still watch the movies? My opinion is, look, you're an individual. You could do and choose what you want to do, right? You could go ahead and decide never to watch these movies ever and kind of take them away from your history bank and don't consider them to be classics at all whatsoever, right? However, if you're a fan of movies, if you are a student of movies, if you are someone who is going to, I don't know, UCLA or something like that, who really heavily studies film, and you are a lover of film and the history of film, these movies are still part of that history. Why? Because of the cinematic kind of achievements they made during these times. The phenomenal acting from the main actors all across the board. Even Hattie McDaniel, fantastic performance in her role in Gone with the Wind. Segregation and all that aside, this is a golden age of Hollywood because of the type of actor that you had there during this time. And these people were putting in an art form and really dedicated to this art form, and like I said, the cinematography, the score, everything was very advanced for that time. The use of color, this was during an age where there was that slow transition from black and white to color. So in a history sense of the movie filming industry and cinema as together, these movies are still very important and should be somewhat acknowledged. However, it should be looked upon it in a different lens because of the time it was filmed and how Hollywood not only treated such races and kind of like had that desegregation laws in place and all that, but that was also the country, right? So it's hard to think about, like I couldn't even imagine if something like this existed today. I mean, other things exist today, unfortunately, right? And we're still dealing with similar situations, but at least representation and equality is starting to be on the rise in a way. We have a lot more ways to go, but at least we've already started to move in the right direction, and hopefully we can continue to do so. So again, it's up to you to decide what you want to do. I will agree with anybody that these movies should probably never be watched. I mean, the huge thing that's always talked about is Song of the South, right? And something I was going to bring back later on. Now Disney has decided to change the one of their rides because it was heavily built with the storyline from Song of the South. But because of what that movie represented back in that time, things need to change, and we don't want to kind of put that out there into the public anymore. Like it doesn't have a place nowadays. So now they're gonna reform it and then do it up to play along a storyline that is from The Princess and the Frog, which I think is fantastic, right? But yeah, nowadays Disney won't even, to the best way they can, they won't even try to acknowledge Song of the South exists. We'll never see it on any platform. We'll never see it released anywhere. I mean, I remember as a kid, I used to be able to see it in VHS form because, the sing-along songs, Zippity Doodah and things like that. But we'll never see that again unless you go to like eBay and you try to find a copy or whatever the case is. But those movies should not really be kind of promoted anymore, right? So, but you have a lot of movies that were done back in those days that have really poor stereotypes and representation. Even like you look at the Disney lens, I mean, Dumbo, you have those black crows that are just really badly. You watch that now and you're like, whew, but I heard that they even put a description in front of that movie on the Disney Plus service. I haven't seen it yet because I actually do own the DVD, but they are trying to make it aware that yes, we do acknowledge that, again, making of it at this time, this was just something that was common, but it shouldn't be. And times have changed, and times should continue to change. But yeah, so Gone with the Wind, again, if you haven't seen it, it's really up to you if you want to check it out. I've seen it a long time ago, and I am very curious to see what an older self of mine will think of the movie nowadays. I think I already have an idea. But it'll just be interesting to see like how I would feel now being of an older age and watching this movie, now experiencing the things that I've experienced and I've seen in the world today. So there you go. Gone with the Wind on HBO Max. Have at you. So moving on to other news, and I do apologize, guys. I mean, it is a very long show so far, but a lot of things to cover since I last was able to talk about things. But again, I will try to run through these things as quick as possible. So moving on to other news, Marlon Wayans, he pulls a Chappelle and signs an exclusive deal with HBO Max. So we're sticking to HBO Max for now. But yeah, Marlon Wayans decided to team up with HBO Max to produce scripted projects and stand-up comedy specials. So the details of the deal itself, like money-wise, was not really released. But basically, it's kind of like a first look deal, but this will be his platform moving forward. So the article here says, signed an overall deal with Warner Media-owned streaming platform that covers scripted and unscripted series projects and stand-up comedy. A scripted project co-written with Wayans' longtime producer partner Rick Alvarez, and a pair of comedy specials are already in the works. So yeah, Marlon Wayans found himself a home over there at HBO Max. So I hope things work out for him. I mean, for me personally, he's like hit or miss, but he has definitely been attached to a lot of things I do find hilarious. So I am very curious to see what he has in store. But that family, the Wayans family, wow, those guys are so talented and business-minded too. So I'm sure he learned a lot from his older brothers there. So very interesting to see there. We recently got an announcement about season 2 of The Boys on Amazon. I'm super excited about that. So that has a release date. Let me pull that up now. So as I'm reading through here, yada yada yada. So yeah, that's strange. Okay, so for some reason I cannot find the release date, but it was announced because they had a special kind of online reveal where they showed like some stills from the upcoming season. Oh, here we go. Friday, September 4th. That will be the new release. That is the new release date for season 2 of The Boys. But something to note is now when season 1 came out, they released all the episodes available at once, which was kind of like the norm, of a lot of these series. But shows like The Mandalorian, they kind of prove that the weekly release is still something that is very widely acceptable. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there who are like, impatient and like, oh, I can't wait. I need to watch the next episode. And I totally get it. I was the same way, but it did kind of build up that hype. And it made it more satisfying, in my opinion, in watching the following episodes, right? And having to wait. And it gave us more time to even talk about it, too, to build that anticipation. And look, I grew up in an age where that was just normal. We had to wait week after week for a new episode to come out, and we had no choice. And if you missed it, guess what? Shit out of luck, because there's no way to replay it unless you videotaped it or something like that. So I do like that now they decided for The Boys, when September 4th comes around, you'll be able to access the first 3 episodes all at once. However, after that, they will release each episode week after week. So that is interesting to learn there. I'm extremely excited for what is in store for season 2, because I thought season 1 was phenomenal. I'm just hoping it doesn't fall into that whole like popular shows like Heroes found themselves in, where the first season was fantastic and then it just goes out the window after that. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Hey, guess what? Who here remembers the old TV series Unsolved Mysteries? I remember the creepy music, and I forgot the host's name back in the day. With his really deep voice and the way he would present every episode and everything like that. Robert Stack, that's it. Robert Stack was the host of that show, and it was a real program that covered real unsolved cases in the world. Or in the US, I should say. And it asked the viewers to chime in or call in, not during the show, but, after you watch it, if you had tips or if you noticed something that could help them solve these cases. And they were actually able to solve a good amount of cases during the run of this series. Well, guess what? Netflix is bringing it back. Unsolved Mysteries will return July 1st, this week. So it's going to be a new documentary series. Sean Levy executive produces the 12-part series, which will use reenactments in a documentary format to profile real-life mysteries and unsolved crimes, lost love, cases involving missing persons, and unexplained paranormal events. So each episode, just like how the TV series was, will focus on one mystery and will once again look to viewers to help aid investigators in closing the book on long outstanding cases. So they released a trailer on this last week. I watched it and it looks exciting. This is kind of up my alley. I kind of like watching things like this. But what it looks like is like now it looks like they're going to go global with this one too. So it's not only cases that are here in the US, but it looks like they're going to go into other countries to kind of unravel these mysteries as well. So yeah, if you want to check it out, the trailer is available online on YouTube, but you don't have to wait that long, because in a couple of days, Wednesday to be specific, we're going to be able to watch it on Netflix. So I will definitely check it out. More than likely, we'll have my thoughts on the channel about it. So do check that out. And again, going to what is old is now new. Who remembers that 80s classic Daryl? That movie Daryl. Daryl was about a robotic kid that was produced by the government to be super intelligent and to aid them in, war and things like that. However, the kid, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, but the kid finds his way out into the real world, kind of adopted by a real family to be one of their own. One of the funny scenes I always remember, and when they realize he's special, is that he was sitting down in front of a Commodore 64 playing pole position, and how he was like zooming through every level as if it was nothing. And then of course him in the crazy, a jet fighter, and just like going, ham on things. So very cool movie if you haven't checked it out. I'm pretty sure it's very dated by now, but it looks like Daryl is now being looked into to be a new comedy series that will be a sequel to the movie that will potentially air on TNT or TBS. So Daryl is coming back. So just basically what I'm reading here. And again, very unexpected. This is one of those properties that I never even thought anyone would even go back to. But I guess it kind of makes sense, especially with technology and things these days. So Hale, and when they talk about Hale, Tony Hale, um, Tony Hale would play an older version of Daryl. The original actor who played Daryl was Barrett Oliver. But Daryl, who is a government-created robot with superhuman reflexes and mental abilities. The half-hour single-camera comedy will follow Daryl, who is now 44, trying to keep up with a world that he was never designed for. The listing includes the great tagline, "The boy everyone wanted has become the man no one needs," in the TV adaptation nobody asked for. I think that is, if I was sitting in that conference room and I was listening to that pitch, I'd be like, sold. You have Go Picture. That gets it for me. I think it would be great if they had a 44-year-old Daryl, and then you had like a 40-year-old Vicky from Small Wonder, and they meet up somehow, and that kind of goes into season 2 or something like that. I think combining Daryl and Vicky from Small Wonder would be the best thing in the world. So we'll see how far along they get with this. Again, it was something that was being pitched, and it looks like they're moving forward with it. So let's see when we'll see it. But if we do get a chance to, I am definitely going to check that out, because that looks like it's gonna be insane. More news here. Scott Pilgrim, the most beloved cult classic movie based off of the graphic novel series. Edgar Wright was talking to some folks recently, and basically it's like, could we potentially see the return of Scott Pilgrim? And he said maybe, but it will be in animated form. So Edgar Wright is considering, bringing back Scott Pilgrim into animated form as a sequel. He said there are some plans, and there's nothing official yet, but there are some plans to revisit the material in an animated way. We've been talking with Brian and with Jared for a while about it. What if we did something with the books in anime form? It's being discussed as we speak. There's nothing official yet. So when he's speaking about Brian and Jared, I'm pretty sure he's referring to the people he worked with on the movie, along with the writer of the content. So it's one of those situations where everyone who saw the movie loved the movie. At least those that I know. I love the movie. I think the movie is one of those really underrated comic book adaptations that definitely people should check out. Great performances all across the board, great storytelling, great editing, and it's just perfect from beginning to end. Now, obviously, those who read the comic will remember that they did cover pretty much almost everything on point in the movie, with some differences, right? But it will be interesting to kind of see that style of artwork in an animated version. I think that would be really fun to see. I mean, it got a video game release that kept a lot of the traditional art form there, and it played out very well. So it would be really kind of cool to see this in animated forms. I hope that this is something that can take off the ground, because I would love to see an animated version of Scott Pilgrim. And let me know your thoughts if you would be down for something like that too. And last of kind of like the movie on Hollywood universe, we all know about Quibi. And Quibi is having a lot of problems, and it's one of those platforms that had a lot of high hopes and expectations, but then kind of got released and forgotten really quickly. Well, at least for me, I think Quibi became a little bit more interesting. So it was announced that Quibi will air a Princess Bride recreation that stars Joe Jonas, Sophie Turner, Tiffany Haddish, and a slew of other well-known actors and actresses. So it's going to be done in a kind of episodic form, and all of the episodes were filmed from each of their individual homes. And it's going to be released in chapters for 2 weeks starting starting today. So I might have to download Quibi and check it out. But yeah, for 2 weeks starting June 29th. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like you got a bunch of well-known actors doing their roles from their home, and they're kind of splicing it up into these chapters to recreate the entire Princess Bride. Look, it could be a huge shit show for all I know, right? I'll check it out. I'll download it tonight, and I'll see what I have there. But or it could be fun and exciting. A lot of people are now doing a lot of these from home skits. I think we've been seeing a lot more of these reunion shows. Like Josh Gad led up a huge bunch of those, and he finally closed things out with his Ferris Bueller reunion, which I have to check out because that is one of my all-time favorite movies from the 80s. Whenever I would cut school, I would pop that bad boy in and I would watch it because they say, "Hey, that's me. I'm cutting school too." But yeah, I mean, it's kudos to them to try something new and different. And there's a lot of Princess Bride fans out there like myself. This could be something to kind of gain some attention back to their service. But if it's done poorly, then we may not be hearing about Quibi any much longer. So yeah. So we'll see what happens if I do check it out, and I'm pretty sure I am going to check it out because I have that morbid curiosity. I will let you guys know what I think. So, moving into gaming news now. Look, I would be remiss if I didn't mention something like this. But look, the gaming world has been rocked with a lot of sexual abuse allegations within the last week. You had companies like Ubisoft and EA with a lot of accusations of people who work within those companies being accused of inappropriate behavior. It hit the streaming world, where you had big time Twitch streamers, being called out and now starting to get their accounts banned and they're getting kicked off the service. I give a lot of kudos to those who are finally speaking out. I wish they were able to do it earlier and sooner. But I give a lot of kudos to a lot of these folks who are now finally coming out and speaking out about these. And when I say folks, I of course mean the female community. And, I support them 100%. I am going to back them up every way I can. But to all of the rest of you out there, look, you are in a position that is very public, right? And I do feel like a lot of these people, especially a lot of these streamers, they are out there to be online and visible to the public because they want that attention. They want to have their voices heard because they feel like they are a good representation of this community, right? Myself included. Like, I'm not so much of the one who's out there aiming for fame and fortune. I'm more about just bonding with the community that I love. And that's kind of what I've always wanted to try to create a nice community and environment for all of us to share our passions and celebrate those passions. Well, obviously, there's a lot of other people who may have different ideas and out there and all that. Maybe it started as simple as what I did. And then because of their rise in popularity and fame, they found themselves in a position of power and authority and may have used that to kind of influence things in ways they shouldn't have. All I got to say is, look, you are all in the public eye and you have to be extremely, extremely careful with what you do out there. All right. Even if you're not doing anything, make sure you document a lot of the stuff you do out there, because even a simple comment that maybe you didn't find it to be misleading, someone else might turn it around on you. Now, I'm not saying everyone else is out to get a buck out there or to cause chaos and all that. This is more of just a prevention. There are a lot of people out there who are doing these things legitimate, meaning they are abusing their powers. They are using their fame and, unfortunately taking advantage of those who look up to them. And look, to look up to these people as role models, I mean, I'm sure there are reasons there, but we're, just like anybody else, these people have their own flaws and faults, right? So we all have to be very careful with what we do and how we interact with everyone in general. Um, it's just, it's unfortunate that these things have to come up, because it does kind of put a negativity in this community and kind of a negative light on this community, the gaming industry as a whole had to always fight for its legitimacy. There was a lot of times whenever violence would break out, the first thing that they would do is blame video games and all this kind of stuff like that. And we had to fight. We had to fight to kind of prove that that's not the case, that this is not the reason why these are happening. Now this just adds another thing to it. Like, it all started obviously with Hollywood, and all the coming outs of that. We know corporate America has a lot of issues with this, being like such a dominant force, or a presence, I should say, which it shouldn't be. And one of the places where a lot of us kind of go to get away from things, the gaming world, and now it's here too. It is extremely unfortunate. And, I'm not going to try to talk too much about it, but I had to acknowledge it, because it's terrible. It's really, really terrible, and if any of you out there have been a victim of all this stuff, don't hesitate to speak out on it, because these things need to be addressed. These things need to be put out there, so that those who are the ones that are inflicting this, this abuse and all that, they need to be reprimanded. They need to be looked into, because we don't need this in our space. We don't need this in our lives. We don't need this anywhere in the world. And, I talk about things need to change. It's stuff like this also that needs to change now too. So, again, I support all of you guys out there. I applaud you guys for coming out. I hope more of you have the power and the courage to come out if something was done wrongly towards you. And for those of you who've been, targeted, and who've been, the cause of these abuse, I just hope this is a proper learning lesson for you guys, on how to carry on your life moving forward. And that's all I'll say about that. But moving on to happier news, or, a little more lighthearted type of news, I guess I should say. I don't know what the proper segment is, or segue is. But anyway, let us go into a bit of news that shouldn't be a surprise to us all. The Last of Us 2, everyone's playing it. Everyone's talking about it. But it was announced that it is officially now the fastest selling PS4 exclusive title of all the PS4 titles that came out. On the weekend of launch, it sold over 4 million copies during that weekend. So kudos to The Last of Us 2. I haven't started playing it yet. I'm still trying to get through Final Fantasy VII Remake, but I'm so close. I'm like so close to the end. And then I may also play the first Last of Us, just to kind of remember things. Maybe I'll breeze through it on easy mode, just so I can get the storyline in there, because I'm not trying to like collect achievements or whatever the case is. But congratulations to The Last of Us 2 and Naughty Dog for their achievement there. Last week we were treated with a lot of great gameplay footage from upcoming titles like The Avengers and Cyberpunk 2077. But the huge surprise during the Cyberpunk conference that they had was that they announced that they were going to have a partnership with Netflix and Trigger Studios, the anime studio that gave us Kill la Kill. They're creating a cyberpunk anime called Cyberpunk Edge Runners. It's a 10-episode standalone storyline, and it will be released in 2022. So that's exciting news. That's really, really exciting news there. So I'm looking forward to that. I mean, we have 2 years to wait for that, and hopefully we still get the game at the end of this year. But that should be fantastic. Netflix teased their latest on the Cuphead TV series, and they actually released some footage. So I'll go ahead and show that with you now. But just by looking at it, it looks a lot of fun. It's very, very, and let me just mute the volume here. But yeah, they had some behind the scenes there. They had some demo artwork, but they're keeping the animation style to like that Fleischer old style animation. And look, the look and feel of the game itself is what drew me in. And to have that old school animated look to it was amazing and a lot of fun. The fact that they're keeping that for their animated series that they're working on is fantastic. And I really personally cannot wait to check this series out because it looks like it's going to be a blast. It looks phenomenal. And it just looks like a lot of fun. No release date as of yet, from what I am aware of. Let me just check here. Let's see. Yeah, no release date as of yet, but at least we got teased with it, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. So definitely looking forward to that. In other gaming news, Crystal Chronicles, the remastered edition that is coming out on the Switch, will during its launch date will also include a demo that will launch on the same day that will allow people to play. So let's say you have a group of four friends, right? Let's say, or I should say three, because you could only play 4 people in this game. But let's say myself and my 3 other friends wanted to play. I'm the only one who decided to purchase the game. But my 3 other friends want to try it out before they purchase it, right? So what this demo would allow you to do is that it will allow myself to host the game and allow these 3 people, 3 other friends, to join me, and we can play 13 dungeons. The demo will include 13 dungeons that are playable, and the other 3, all they have to do is just download the demo, and that's it. But because I purchased the game, we are all now allowed to play co-op together online. So I think that's a great idea. Again, it gives people that kind of feeling like, is this something I can continue playing? Is this something that I should consider purchasing? After we go through these dungeons, do we want to continue as a group? Maybe we have a wrong group, or maybe we have the best group. We don't know, right? So I think that's a great thing that they're doing, and that sounds like a lot of fun. So I can't wait for that. Would you spend $1 million to pitch an idea if you had the money? I think I personally won't. No matter how passionate I am. I mean, if if I was a multi-billionaire, then maybe that's like a smidgen of money for me, and then maybe I would consider it. But let's say I'm an up-and-comer and all that kind of stuff like that. I don't know if I could ever spend that much money just to pitch an idea. Well, Traveler's Tales didn't think it was that bad, and basically they spent around $1 million to pitch a concept of a Hobbit game that they were working on. And when I read that piece of news, I was floored by it, extremely floored by it. But Traveler's Tales, if you're somewhat familiar with the company, they are the ones who are responsible for a lot of those Lego games. And those Lego games have been a lot of fun, and they've done a good job with that stuff. But they were always, as reported here, back in 2008, the studio has always set its sights on movie tie-ins that included Hobbit adaptations. So The Hobbit. So the developer was given 6 months to make a demo to show Peter Jackson and Guillermo del Toro, who would later, obviously leave the movies. But without a script of The Hobbit, they had to adapt scenes from Lord of the Rings to showcase a template of what they will be able to do for the Hobbit series. And I guess during this time, things got a little out of control, as the article says here. So Traveler's Tales actually ended up designing 4 playable and polished levels, 5 tech demos, and all costing around $1 million. These were all for Xbox 360, but they held up surprisingly well. So one of the developers there said he might post a full playthrough, which I would love to see. But the first demo sees Frodo sneaking around the forest and is surprisingly evocative of Monolith's Mordor series. It was designed to show off the studio's take on a free-roaming stealth, putting a dose of Assassin's Creed into Lord of the Rings. Other demos turned big fights from the big movies into boss battles like Gandalf's fight with Saruman and the Balrog, which both look appropriately flashy. Another showed off some combat with Aragorn. And then, Frodo using the One Ring on Weathertop and wrestling with the temptation to use it when he was being hunted by the Nazgul, the Black Riders there. So very interesting stuff. You know, and like they mentioned here, they went way too far and spent way too much money. Um, but yeah, not surprising that Peter Jackson and Game Guitar liked what they saw. They were told that they were happy for the developer to make a live action Hobbit game, but Warner Brothers apparently had other ideas. It wanted a game that ran parallel with the movies, but with a different story. So obviously that's why things didn't get greenlit for this, since they wanted to do a direct adaptation of the movie themselves. So really interesting stuff. If you want to read more about this, PCGamer.com has a great article about it. You can definitely check it out and read about it, and they even have a little video here. But I was really shocked when I read about this. I mean, $1 million for a pitch that didn't get them anywhere. I mean, that's a lot of money. But yeah, the video kind of just describes things. I think it shows some of the screen caps. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so this is how some of the game looked like. And yeah, it looks, here's the stealthy version there. I mean, it looks pretty good. Oh, here we go. I mean, you have to think about, this was back in 2008 too. So for this time, this looks actually phenomenal. Look at this. And this is not the movie, folks. This is the game itself. This is what they were working on. And I don't know if you're controlling Gandalf during this. Oh yeah, you are, because you are. It's prompting you to press B. And here are some of the scenes with Aragorn there. I mean, come on. For what this is, I mean, this looks like a lot of fun. It looks like it would have been a lot of fun. So it's unfortunate that they couldn't, like, you know, move along further with this. But we did. Well, not for The Hobbit, but I should say that, you know, for the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, we got some really decent game adaptations, which I enjoyed a lot. Those were created by EA. But this looks like that's in similar vein for at least what they were trying to do. You know, they had to do scenes based off of Lord of the Rings, and since they didn't have any content from The Hobbit to work with. But if you could just imagine Hobbit characters in here, like imagine fighting the three giant trolls and things like that, I think that would have been phenomenal. So yeah, I mean, check it out if you want to read up more on it. I think that is definitely a lot of interesting news there. So yeah, so that's all I got in the gaming news area. So lastly, and I think I've already mentioned this before, with you know, Disneyland and all of Disney will be retooling the Splash Mountain ride, like I mentioned before, to take out the references or kind of association with Song of the South, and they will reimagine those rides to be a story based off of The Princess and the Frog. But in Disneyland news, they were all set to open up in middle of July, and that looks like not to be the case anymore. So because of the current rise of Corona situation over there, it looks like the opening date is getting pushed back for a date that is still to be determined. However, Disney World's still aiming for that July opening. I don't know how they're going to do it in Florida, to be honest with you. But in Japan, you know, their Disneyland or Japan Disney and Disney Sea is set to open this week, to reopen again this week. So I am very curious to see how that's going to go. But unfortunately, Universal Japan has delayed the opening of their new Super Nintendo World. This was something that was all slated and scheduled to open up this summer. We've seen pictures of it, and it looks like the construction and you know, everything needed to finalize that area has already been mostly completed. But again, due to fears of the pandemic, even though Universal has slowly started opening up to Osaka residents only, it looks like they will indefinitely delay the opening of Super Nintendo World. So no future date has been announced yet, but we may not be able to see it open up until next year. I have a feeling that this is mainly done because of the lack of tourism, to be honest with you. I think, yes, it is true that a lot of Japanese people would love to go there. And they have opened up tourism within Japan back up, so people are allowed to travel from prefecture to prefecture. But I really do think they were really banking on a lot of the foreign tourists to come in and check it out. Obviously, if I was able to go during this time, I would go myself for sure. I would love to check it out, and I know a lot of other people who would as well. But since they, Japan's borders have still been closed to a majority of countries from coming in, and we're not sure yet as to when majority of that will open up. I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons why it delayed it. So I guess we'll have to wait and see when that opens. And then when it does, I'm hoping that they can at least open it up for the locals to enjoy it. And we could possibly see some nice videos of the place. But yeah, so that is pretty much all I got for you guys. Again, I apologize. Ran about 30 minutes longer than normal, but I had a lot to cover here, and I wanted to talk about a lot of different things. So I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for checking it out. Again, if at any time you have any comments or any questions, or want to chime in on anything that I mentioned, do feel free to do so in the comments. Or you find me on social, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm always available. Or if you want to have a live conversation with me anytime during the week, you're more than welcome to join me on Twitch. I stream on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays on Twitch. My schedule is updated every week on Twitter and Facebook, so do check me out. But majority of the time is Mondays. I stream at night, starting around 8 or 9 p.m., depending on when the live show, like how long the live show goes. Wednesdays, I do more of an afternoon, so you could find me usually around 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Fridays, I usually start streaming around 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I do my Flashback Friday series. So do, check me out, join and chat, and you're always welcome. But that being said, that is the show. Again, thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. Definitely enjoy having these conversations with you guys, covering a lot of these topics and all that. So I will be back live for sure next Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the live podcast. But until then, stay cool, stay classy, stay safe, be kind to one another, wash your hands, wear a mask, and I hope you make the rest of your week a memorable one. With the holiday weekend here in the United States happening this weekend, please enjoy as much as you can, but do enjoy it in a safe manner. So until next time, guys, peace.